Archie 2010's 706. After some pages are wasted boring me with Archie angsting that he's an adult, I finally see Sabrina's house. Sabrina is seen using a spatula and holding a plate of pancakes. What's confusing is that she calls this unrecognizable blonde Zelda. Why does the franchise keep changing the designs of the ants like they aren't as respectable as her, who barely changes at all, when they're main characters? It's confusing that while Archie's an adult living on his own, Sabrina is still living with her aunts. At first I thought she was going to be shown working in a diner, and these were people she was working for. I don't imagine her to be still living with her aunts as an adult because I've seen the sitcom where that isn't the case and she's a journalist. But instead I'm wondering how Sabrina's life turned out like this. This issue is just meandering, being dull and unengaging instead of instantly getting to the plot. Nothing actually happened in this scene. 7 pages in, Sabrina looks for toadstools in the woods with Salem, who has the best design he's ever had in a comic book. He's not as dark as in the sitcom, but still, Sabrina finds a mushroom and says that it doesn't usually bleed unless it's a sign. Wouldn't it be boring if it never explained what it meant by that, so that I'd never understand? So again, why don't they just zap their potion ingredients to them? No matter how much they want to save on magic, teleportation is not the kind of spell they would not use to save on magic because it's so useful. So I have to assume that they can't zap potion ingredients to them, and they can't summon them with them having magic in them because that would be creating new magic. Why does the comic keep cutting away from the actually interesting character to go to Archie doing boring generic adult things? I don't care. Sabrina gets bitched at because the forest she's in has a sign that arbitrarily calls it private property. She naturally says, "This is the woods. How is it private property?" And she's called a tourist. She thinks to herself not to turn him into a toad because it's an insult to toads. And she walks away, disappointing me by telling this unlikable asshole to have a nice day, making her look uncharacteristically two-faced. Why write this character to act like this if he's not gonna get punished with magic? While turning him into something would go overboard, a curse wouldn't be so bad. Then after some more pages that shouldn't have been produced. Like, what is the point of having Archie if he's not gonna be a clumsy person or an idiot? Sabrina sees a poster advertising a Josie concert while walking home. Wait a minute, why would someone who can teleport ever walk home? She shouldn't have even found this and started the plot in the first place. She could have also made herself super fast. And seriously, why does her nose look so pink? She looks silly, like a clown. I don't know why there's any panels with Archie in it, it just detracts from the issue with padding. There's a reason they made Archie a clumsy idiot, it's to keep the story entertaining. Sabrina leaves the house, and I guess it's Hilda who tells her to have fun at her movie. Her aunts are busy summoning spirits, but the writer's too lazy to explain why. I remember when the ants were written to feel like actual people. Here they're just witches, so they do witch stuff for no reason. Why have them dressed like normal people in their house then? Even the 70s versions of the ants didn't summon spirits for absolutely no reason. There's some more boring padding where nothing actually happens. There's just barely anything to say about this issue. It's almost like it should have had the characters be in high school like they're supposed to be, because then they'd meet up and start the actual plot much faster. And we see the pussycats, and then Sabrina sits on a roof for no reason while saying that it'd be nice to fall in love. She did, with Harvey. What is the point of pretending that Harvey never existed? She pets Salem. Archie's car crashes because of a deer on the road. Sabrina magically senses it, which makes no sense because it's not usually the case that she can sense anything bad that happens. And you'd think she'd always be like this because car accidents and stuff are happening all over the world. And plus, Archie's always accident prone. She'd constantly get distracted by feeling like this every time he trips or bumps into Moose. You might assume from this that this happens to her all the time, and she's basically a superhero, constantly sensing that people are in danger and going to save them with her magic, which would end up interrupting any dates she would have later on. So it sure would be stupid if she only ever had the sense with Archie. Archie can't get a call through to his dad. It seems arbitrary, so I don't take it seriously. Especially since it combines with the fact that even though his car crashed, he can still walk and run perfectly fine. So that's really convenient. Either way, it doesn't really matter, because he sees some things in the dark with glowing eyes, even though this is Earth, not the other realm. So he has to run away. Well, Sabrina somehow knows that someone needs her help and flies away. Are you kidding me? The story's over? It took until the last scene to have an actual plot start going, and it's already over? Archie 2010 707. Archie runs from some wolves that shouldn't even be on Earth, and Sabrina eventually uses magic telling them to leave. Wouldn't the previous issue have been a lot more entertaining to watch if she was spending the whole story doing stuff like this, saving people? He apologizes for some reason, and then I'm confused when he says his name and she says hers. So this is a fanfiction where they haven't met before. What is the point of having main Archie characters reintroduce themselves to each other? For the most part, all it amounts to is them saying what name they have. Archie says yes, he gets his workplace with a busted car, but Sabrina tells him she fixed his wheels. Pop expresses pity for Archie, who thanks him, and Sabrina says Pop taste is amazing. If the writer thought to have Archie say, "I can't believe you've never been here. Why was this written anyways? What is the point of having it so that Sabrina never met the Archie gang before, if you're going to have her meet them anyways? It's disrespectful to her legacy where she grew up with them." There should have been a text box at the start of the story arc saying that's an alternate universe, because this can't be canon otherwise. This is like if there was a later story in IDW where Sonic introduced himself to Tangle as if he never met her before. The Archie 2010s comic used to start from issue 1, making it clear that it's supposed to be a separate comic and continuity entirely from the real Archie comic. Archie thanks her, and she says she loves the late night walk. Oh, just because she's a witch? A witch would warp home, not exhaust herself walking for so long. If she wanted to save on magic, she'd exercise restraint in it, but not this way. She'd just not zap the remote control to her, or the ingredients for cooking. Archie offers to give her a tour of Riverdale and show her his favorite spots. In the morning, he throws a baseball to her, and she catches it in a glove, and he says Betty taught him how to play baseball in this weird bizarro universe. Certainly not the real Archie comic, where at first the girls were made fun of for trying to play sports because they were new to it. He says Betty's a nerd, so that's some more dumb dialogue. She's not Dilton. I assume she gets good grades, but it's not like she's a nerd, she's a sports star. He says she knows how to do everything. Mary Sue alert. Seriously, you'd think the writer would write this, and then warning bells would go off in his head. He says he couldn't teach Ronnie how to play baseball. Definitely an alternate universe, because I'm pretty sure Ronnie's been good at baseball before in the Archie comics. She's joined in with the girls in at least one story where the girls are better at a sport than Archie thinks after joking about it. Sabrina's a great pitcher's throw that impresses Archie. They enjoy going to a costume store, and Sabrina says she's into horror stuff. Oh, just because she's a witch. Whatever happened to the 70s comic where she was a normal girl to contrast her aunts, to give the message that a witch isn't necessarily different from everybody else? That was refreshing. Sabrina's a goody two-shoes. She would hate horror because it'd have gore in it, and she's too compassionate to stand looking at that. If you wanted to be at least slightly a character, you could have her laugh at it because she did that in one of the Laugh comics, because she'd think people like Freddy Krueger look ridiculous, because she's a witch and she's used to seeing monsters. Are you expecting me to believe Sabrina would like stuff like Saw? Sabrina and Archie go to an arcade, and Sabrina awkwardly asks if this is where he hangs out with his girlfriends. She confuses me by saying that it feels like there's a presence with him sometimes. He asks if he's haunted, and she says it just feels crowded, and asks for something to eat. I hate when a story is confusing and too lazy to ever explain itself. That gives me the same feeling as early Pender stuff, like Sonic Live. I feel like I'm missing something. Even at the end of this arc, I won't know what she meant. Betty and Veronica aren't dead, so why does she act like she's sensing a ghost? Sabrina says it must be hard on Archie that his friends aren't here. He's the last one still in Riverdale. That's not believable at all. His friends would have no reason to all leave. What are the chances of that being the case for all of them? This is just there to be a needlessly depressing future that tries to make the comics before this look bad because they're supposedly leading up to this. But can't be because he doesn't know Sabrina. You'd think Betty would stay here because she'll never get over him, and if Ronnie leaves, she has him all to herself. And Ronnie would know that, so she wouldn't leave. Sabrina can't tell him why she's staying here for the summer. He says he doesn't know anything about her, and she says she didn't have all of those sun-soaked summers with her friends, totally ignoring the 70s comics where she went to the beach with Harvey 7,000 times. I guess witches are too prideful to just zap up new friends. Wouldn't kids make their imaginary friends real? I guess she would think that's not the same. She says they're different and thanks him for the tour while leaving. She's ditching him just because he grew up with friends? That's forced. Archie does some fence painting, and is at least smart enough to realize that it's for the best because he doesn't need another romance, but doesn't elaborate that it's because it costs some money, or because he thinks it's doomed to failure. Otherwise, this would be out of character. Sabrina's Aunt Zelda and whoever this is supposed to be talked to her when she's sad at home, even though she walked away from him. So this is her fault. Zelda says it's the witch in her, as they're ancient and naturally mistrustful. It wouldn't be natural. They'd just learn to be like that because they're always scared someone would find out their secret, or they're surrounded by other witches who could abuse magic on them at the drop of a hat. Saying witches are naturally mistrustful is just insulting, going all the way back to the 70s style, which even that didn't say that about them. And yet they aren't drawn like it. Sabrina says it was never going to work just because Archie is obsessed with his friends. Her aunts point out that something about Archie called to her. It's so boring to have both aunts have the same personality. Hilda's supposed to stand out. She might as well not be here if this is Hilda. I feel like she's just being given lines Zelda could say. Archie leaves Pop-Tate's being thanked and gets a piece of paper telling him to look for the light to go find Sabrina at the Witchful Woods at midnight. Why didn't Sabrina put her name on the paper? She's lucky you went there. Am I ever going to be told why I was chased by magic wolves? Because I'm assuming they were summoned by her aunts trying to summon those spirits. Sabrina greets him near a campfire and says she was friendless growing up. She also befriended a lot of woodland animals, so she's not sure how to deal with humans. It's all new, nothing like the actual canon before this, but it's only the case to be angsty, and why would I want that? While being different on its own isn't bad, it's still bad even if you ignore what came before it. What is the point of practically admitting Harvey in the 2010s? It's not Harvey's fault he was mischaracterized in the manga, so if there's bad fan reception to that, it'd be stupid if that's why he's being ignored. Granted, it's far more interesting to try to ship her with other main Archie characters that have more iconicness. But we all know the comic series would never have the guts to keep her with any of them because Archie is locked to these two girls. And Reggie doesn't want to settle down and stay with anyone except maybe Veronica. It feels pointless compared to shipping her with Harvey because he doesn't seem to have that problem. She says she's not like other girls, and she suddenly doesn't want to be, rather than her wanting to live like a mortal like the real canon so that she can feel like she's really one of the gang. She says she doesn't want to be compared to his exes. He agrees, and says he wants to spend more time doing the stuff she likes, and notes she's willing to share. I wonder if they would have dated if he did grow up with her instead of her being a shiny new girl while Veronica and Betty are out of the way. So that's supposed to be the point of him just now meeting her. Except Archie isn't constantly screwing up and requiring Sabrina to use magic to help him. So since this doesn't feel like Archie, I don't really feel like it's showing me what would happen if Archie and Sabrina got together. I'm wondering why Veronica and Betty ever gave Archie up, because that's blatantly, pathetically out of character. If either were the type to give him up, they'd have done so before. I know people can change, but you don't really change that much after you're done being a teenager. Your music tastes are kind of solidified at that point. There's a montage of them doing stereotypical dating things, and then sitting on a roof for no reason. Most of Archie's 708 pages are wasted on Sabrina not being there. Some time is wasted before Sabrina tells Archie in the woods what she ate when she was a kid. Why did he wait until now to ask her this? This would be an early thing. She says she ate too many lentils. I don't buy that witches would eat that, and not eat anything modern, because they're living with modern people, in a modern neighborhood. And they wouldn't torture themselves eating nothing but vegetables. Plus, I would think most of what she would eat would be witch stuff, but she can't say that. But lentils wouldn't be the normal thing that she would have on the side. She says she wants cheese doodles, but then she looks worried. Some pages are wasted after this. Why show us Jughead without Sabrina there? I don't care about this because it's contradicting past canon, so it can't be the canon future of these characters, and there's no magic at all. I'm guessing none of these pages matter and it won't be confusing at all to the Sabrina plot if I skip them. They hear snapping noises, and Sabrina decides to take off running with them. There's a laughably ridiculously dark panel for Archie, and the story ends with some tall figures with a face like the moon and a face like the sun standing above Sabrina. But Sabrina's a witch, so she'd logically just point to destroy any monsters that threaten her and make Archie forget. I wonder if they're Sabrina's aunts, because they're tall, human-shaped figures dressed in black like stereotypical witches who thought to go track down Sabrina. As Archie 709 reveals, they are her aunts, although I didn't recognize Hilda, because she has a different hairstyle. So why were aunts wearing a moon and sun mask, which Archie's too polite to question them on? Because they're witches, not people who actually make sense. Hilda asks if Sabrina was eating fried meat in the woods because she just hates Pop-Tarts so much. So what took them so long to go search for Sabrina and meet Archie, if they're the type to do that? The aunts politely greet them and advise them to go home because it's late. Yeah, just treat Sabrina like she's still a child. Archie says it felt a little chilly after they left, but that's forced because they were smiling the whole time and being polite. It's not like they scared him with magic because he's mortal. This was the tamest Hilda ever was. Sabrina says that's just them and expects me to believe they're even more like this after the sun goes down. He finally questions why they're wearing black. Sabrina kisses them goodbye and angrily goes to her aunt, who look annoyed all of a sudden. So what took them so long to be like this? Zelda comments in a catty way that she got a boyfriend so quickly. She doesn't see why a witch of Sabrina's skill needs anything explained because this is not casting in Cauldrons 101, and Sabrina tells her to spell it out for her. There's much needed levity out of nowhere because Zelda snorts in laughter at her saying spell and apologizes with a sweet smile. This is the kind of tone that should always be the case for Sabrina's stories and is sorely missing most of it. Then she bitches her out because Archie's immortal. Zelda says they didn't move to Riverdale for her to go gallivanting about eating burgers with boys. Why did they? What did they expect? Her to stay single her whole life? They're very lucky she even still lives with them as an adult, as it is. Or do they insist on it because they want to make sure she stays single? It's not like they don't have any point in this, because dating a mortal means having to conserve magic to avoid revealing it. And then having to expend even more magic for a memory-erasing spell if she does reveal it. So either way, the mortal's just dragging her down. It's a big hassle compared to just dating another witch, so it's stupid to do it. And besides, she'll greatly outlive Archie anyways, so getting too attached to him will just doom her to heartbreak down the road. And that's another legitimate reason for them to see this as a mistake. What sucks is that they aren't explaining these reasons, so they just come off like anti-mortal bigots for no reason. I like that Hilda says they don't object to gallivanting, but it really should be Hilda doing all of this talking, as she's usually the one in focus, so it's out of character. Although Zelda deserves her time to shine where she's the main one talking, after the reverse being true for most of the series. The quiet one that only occasionally chimes in being cheerful is supposed to be Zelda, The point is, they would have had this talk with her long ago. At least it's not confirmed that they didn't have this talk with her a long time ago and are just reiterating to her. They're reminded that she's a witch first and family comes first. Why are they being so vague? They better be being vague because they know Sabrina already knows why dating mortals is dumb. But that wouldn't stop her anyways. Family comes first could only really mean we want you to do stuff for us. But they could just zap up a slave to do stuff for them. So they don't need her to do the family duties. There's some more worthless, embarrassingly dark pages I skipped past like most sensible people. Archie being dark like this is the Shadow the Hedgehog of the Archie comics. Why are they trying to make this like that embarrassing show called Riverdale? Betty tells Sabrina in the woods that Veronica plans to bulldoze these woods to bring business to Riverdale. It already has business. It's not like we're being told it's struggling. But I see her point. Sabrina warns her that the woods have a complicated history. She can't really be clear about it though. What, monsters? Idiotic writing. Witches could zap away monsters and ghosts. She'd do that. She can be opposed to this because she's a nature lover. And maybe it's a good thing to bulldoze the woods then. It would get rid of a place the monsters have to live. Although the monsters would go somewhere else, but humans with guns would take care of it. They would go out in the open, then they would all get decimated. If the woods stay around, the monsters are gonna keep reproducing in there, so maybe it's a good thing. She says a lot of people who venture into the woods don't come out the other side in such good shape. The head witch would have undone this spell because it'd make magic too obvious. And how does she think this is supposed to convince Veronica that they shouldn't destroy the woods? Sabrina thankfully admits that she has the interests of Riverdale at heart. Why is she trying to persuade Veronica instead of just using magic to change her mind, like she did in the sitcom? She could point and then people would think her argument convinced her. It's satisfying that Betty says Veronica doesn't listen to anyone but herself these days. But she wanted to say, these days. She complains about environmental damage, and after some more worthless patting, Sabrina puts her hand on Archie's shoulder and makes him scream and look at her. Which for once makes him feel like actual Archie a tiny bit. But for the most part he's just been a boring normal guy with Archie's hairstyle and hair color. He'd only feel like Archie if he was a clumsy idiot whose car broke down, and Sabrina was using magic to compensate. That would perfectly convince us that this is the best ship ever, instead they've just had a normal boring relationship, making it obvious that he could be dating any girl for the same event. Archie says again that she scared him. She asks if it's something else, and then he says out of complete nowhere that he knew she was a witch. He what? Why didn't we get shown that? If that was just something referenced in mere text, why would that merely be text? If that was something shown in a different comic from this, it's so likely that someone would see that. He wouldn't figure out she was a witch just because her answers are like that. Because mortals don't believe in witches, he would think her answer just crazy, or like the roleplay as witches, like Wiccans. He asks, it's not like broomsticks and flying and, you know, stealths though, right? Why would he ever think it wouldn't be that? What witch wouldn't have a spell? He doesn't know if he can handle it if it was like that. She breaks up with him just because of that, when she could easily just erase his memory of being told she's a witch. Since Harvey would have the same reaction, which she would know, and that didn't stop her from wanting him in every continuity when she knew that. This is the weakest excuse for ending the relationship, to the point where it's insulting that it was made a big deal out of it. She would have always known he wouldn't like witches, but that didn't stop her from going after mortals before. It's still obvious he's better off dating her than Betty because her magic fixes screw-ups. Her aunts didn't do anything to him, so he has no reason to be scared into breaking up with her. Another better reason for them to break up. Archie should have been the one breaking up with her for being a witch. Then it would be instantly understandable, but even then she would just erase his memory of him knowing she's a witch. So there's just no way they would break up. So it has to be Sabrina ending the relationship, but this is a pathetic excuse to do so. It should have been that she got tired of his constant clumsiness and stupidity and having to expend all of her magic and be without it for weeks because she constantly has to use magic to fix his mistakes. Literally anybody could write them breaking up better. So it can be believable that she wouldn't want to date him, and they wouldn't be the perfect couple. But if you do it like this, it just makes it look stupid. And that's the last page with Sabrina in it. All of that for this ending. Well, at least that was better than the Sonic Sally breakup, even if it's still a mess. They're just calmly talking to each other, and she calmly says goodbye. So it wasn't overly dramatic massacring either of these characters. Though it still has Sabrina painted as unacceptably stupid beyond her actual character. But it feels underwhelming to have a breakup so calm and casual, like, meh, whatever. This whole plot point never really mattered anyways. You should have never been invested in it. I never really was, because I knew they wouldn't have the guts to make it permanent. Even though this is the reboot, so it'd be fine. Maybe it wouldn't feel underwhelming, maybe it would feel like something that was built up to. If they had them go on a whole date, and a whole bunch of things went wrong because it's Archie. So she would break up with him after a montage where she gets tired of what a jinx he usually is. That would feel climactic because a whole bunch of conflict is happening instead of just them talking. I see Archie versus Predator here, and I know Sabrina's in one of the stories where Archie crosses over with the Predator, but I refuse to acknowledge it in her review because it's instantly obvious Sabrina would just point to destroy the Predator. She has elemental magic, teleportation magic, she can shrink something. I bet it's not going to explain that Sabrina is out of magic, which would make sense, or that the Predator is immune to magic. But even then, that'd be a Diabolus Hex Machina. If Sabrina can't use magic on it directly, she could still surround it with a force field to trap it, and shrink it to crush it to death. It would only make sense if Sabrina was out of magic, and she called her aunts and they revealed they were out of magic too. It would still be insanely bad luck, but that happens in real life too, so it would still be believable. And she would be alone with the Predator and her aunts would be so far away, well, they could still bring potion ingredients to completely destroy the Predator. It'd just take a while for them to get to it. That could have Sabrina work in a story with the Predator in it. This issue by Nick Spencer and Mariko Tamaki wasted most of its panels on boredom, where Sabrina and Archie meandered around the town, with Archie having a boring, unentertaining adult life. But it was so dull that I didn't feel like reading the dialogue a lot, until Sabrina showed up again. It's all pointless until the very end, where Sabrina somehow has a sixth sense that Archie crashed his car, and has to run for his life from creatures that don't look like they should be on Earth in the first place. This sucked. You could have cut out all of the panels with Archie until the last scene. And hey, you could have cut out a lot of the panels with Sabrina too. And we'd miss absolutely nothing in terms of a genuine, continuous plot and entertainment. We get it. Adult life is depressing. But this is a comic for non-adults. And you're trying to make them think life ends when you get to that point. Also, it's cringeworthy to see gore. This story is about Archie and Sabrina getting to know each other for apparently the first time, with Archie giving her a tour of Riverdale because apparently she didn't grow up there. And after a forced moment for padding where Sabrina tries to give up on him because he's got friends he's really focused on, even though they're not with him constantly distracting him from her, she ends up leaving him a note to get him to date her as long as he doesn't compare it to his exes. So that was nice, if confusing. Like, what is this nonsense where she feels a presence? How did she ever have a sixth sense to know to save him from wolves if she never knew him until now? There would have to be a range limit on it or she'd always be feeling that sense, because there's so many people in the world and tons of time zones. I wish there was a text box at the start saying this is an alternate universe instead of a contradicting canon despite the giant issue number, and forcing me to conclude it's an alternate universe on my own to take it seriously. Which is not how you write a Glimpse into the Future series, where it ends up being pointless. The past two stories on the Sabrina end were about Sabrina being pressured to break up with Archie because he's mortal, without her aunt even bothering to explain the good reasons because of that, because they're just straw men. It would actually take advantage of her dating Archie, and not just some random guy, if she was told to break up with him because he's a clumsy clod, who's always getting into trouble. Which he doesn't seem to be anyways, so he might as well just be normal Joe. She sticks with him because, oh, she doesn't care if he's mortal or not, only for her to break up with him because he's mortal. Because he doesn't like witches because he's immortal. way to stick to your guns. And why did you expect them to like them in the first place? How did they even date this long then? I'm glad the breakup was at least calm and mature, even if it comes off as so nonchalant about ending this plot point that it feels insulting to have it ever be treated like it could last. But so obvious that the way the breakup should have been written is that Archie would be a typical Jinx, and Sabrina would expend all of her magic trying to get him out of those issues. Surrounding this really basic plot was embarrassingly un-Archie dark murder mystery bullshit I ignored, and wasn't confused at all that I did, so apparently it has nothing to do with Sabrina's life anyways. Then this should have been in a different comic. The fact that Sabrina thinks destroying the woods would be not worth it because people don't survive it was far more interesting than the Archie drama ever was. Why won't witches just point to nullify that consequence? Make the woods completely harmless? Use all of their potion ingredients if it requires a lot of magic to do it. Della would know about this. Magic is supposed to be kept secret, so obviously Della would have ordered these woods to be made completely non-supernatural if they somehow got supernatural. This was all just a waste of time. What is the point, other than blatant rating stunt, to have Sabrina dating Archie if Archie's not acting like Archie? And Sabrina doesn't use magic around town once, so Sabrina's not Sabrina. It might as well just be two random people dating.